Welcome back to LexTalks, Legal Topics Simplified, where we like to make these complex legal topics super clear for you.
We try to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for all you law students and enthusiasts out there.
Yeah.
So today we're diving deep into a topic that I think you'll find really, really fascinating
Oh, yeah.
and also really crucial for understanding the legal landscape of India.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's the historical development of the banking system.
Yes.
So
It's a big one.
yeah, we're going to buckle up because we're about to uncover centuries
Yeah.
of evolution here,
Mm-hmm.
from ancient financial practices to the really, really intricate system we see today.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's a long history.
it is a long history. And
Mhm.
since you're all future legal eagles, we're gonna be making sure to connect the dots
Mm.
between these historical shifts
Right.
and the laws that govern banking in India today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think one of the most surprising things
Yeah.
is how long this history is, how far back it goes.
Yeah. Exactly. What's really intriguing is that India's banking history isn't just like a product of recent times.
Yeah.
It goes way back, revealing like how deeply intertwined finance and society have always been in this part of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to find out just how far back
Yeah.
it goes. We're talking the Vedic period,
Yeah.
which started around 1750 BCE.
That's right.
I mean, that's even before the Roman Empire.
Long before the organized banking structures, that we're familiar with today,
Right.
people in ancient India were already engaging in like really sophisticated financial practices. They used instruments that are similar to what we now call bills of exchange, known as Adesha.
Adesha.
Yeah.
Those sound kind of like ancient promissory notes or maybe even early checks.
Exactly. And Adesha was basically an order to a banker to transfer funds to a third party.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it as like a way to move money without physically carrying heavy coins or gold.
Right.
It highlights the need for secure and efficient transactions even in those early times.
So basically the concept of transferring money without physically moving it
Yeah.
has existed for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Does this ancient system have any connection to the legal frameworks that we see today?
I mean, it's more about understanding the historical context of financial needs.
Okay.
While Adesha may not directly translate to modern legal instruments,
Yeah.
They demonstrate a longstanding need for regulation and oversight in financial transactions, a need that would eventually be addressed by formal laws and institutions.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a bit.
Okay.
What happened next in this evolution of banking in India?
Well, a major turning point was the establishment of the first official bank in India, the Bank of Hindustan,
Yeah.
founded in 1770.
Okay.
It marked, a shift towards a more organized banking system.
But I read that the Bank of Hindustan didn't last very long.
Right, right.
What happened? Did its failure have any long-term implications for banking in India?
Its failure in 1832 was a significant event. It exposed the vulnerabilities of a fledgling banking system without a robust regulatory framework.
Yeah.
This event underlined, the need for clear rules, strong oversight, and prudent management lessons that would later inform the development of banking laws in India.
So even in those early days, there was a recognition that banking can't thrive
Yeah.
without proper regulation.
Absolutely. The Bank of Hindustan's collapse served as a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
It highlighted the importance of financial stability and the need to protect depositors' interests,
Right.
paving the way for future regulations.
Okay, so one bank down.
Yeah.
But the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
Right. What happened after the Bank of Hindustan?
Despite the setback, the momentum for organized banking, it continued. Interestingly, over 600 banks
Wow.
were registered in India before the country gained independence in 1947.
Over 600. That's a lot of banks.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing not all of them made it.
See, you're right. Many of those banks didn't survive. The banking landscape was quite turbulent back then with, economic fluctuations and a lack of strong regulatory mechanisms leading to many failures. But this period also saw the emergence of of some key institutions
Yeah.
that would shape the future of banking in India.
Such as,
Like,
give us some names.
well, the presidency banks, for example,
Yeah.
these were the Bank of Bengal,
Yeah.
the Bank of Bombay,
Right.
and the Bank of Madras.
Okay. Okay.
They played a crucial role in establishing a more structured banking system, especially during British rule.
Ah, the presidency banks.
Yeah.
Those names definitely ring a bell.
Yeah.
Weren't they eventually merged to form something else?
You're sharp.
Uh-huh.
In 1921, these three presidency banks were merged
Okay.
to form the Imperial Bank of India.
Oh.
This was a landmark event
Yeah.
that laid the foundation for what would eventually become the State Bank of India.
The State Bank of India.
Yeah.
So we can trace its lineage all the way back to those early presidency banks established under British rule.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's fascinating.
It shows how historical events, mergers,
Yeah.
and the changing political landscape all contributed to the banking structure we see today.
Yeah.
It also, underlines the fact that these institutions weren't static.
Right.
They were constantly adapting to new realities and challenges.
Speaking of challenges, British rule
Yep.
must have had a significant impact
Right.
on the development of the Indian banking system.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the key developments during that era?
Well, for one, the British, they brought their own banking practices and regulatory ideas to India,
Yeah.
which significantly influenced the evolution of the system. They introduced concepts like joint stock banking and
Yeah.
formalized structures for regulation.
So was British influence entirely positive, or were there downsides to it?
It was a mixed bag, really.
Right.
While British influence brought some, much needed structure and organization to the banking sector,
Mm-hmm.
it also led to challenges.
Okay.
There were instances of exploitation,
Right.
and the system primarily served the interests of the colonial administration and British businesses.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's important to see the historical context
Right.
and how it shaped the power dynamics within the banking system.
Yeah.
What were some of the specific issues
Yeah.
that arose during this period?
Well, one major problem was the recurring issue of bank failures.
Okay.
Remember those 600 banks?
Yeah.
Many of them collapsed due to mismanagement, fraud,
Yeah.
and a lack of adequate regulations.
Okay.
This highlighted the vulnerability of the system
Mhm.
and underscored the need for stricter controls to protect depositors and ensure stability.
So despite the attempts to formalize banking,
Yeah.
there were still significant
Yeah.
risks and vulnerabilities in the system.
Exactly. And this realization, coupled with the growing need for a banking system that served the needs of independent India,
Right.
set the stage for a major shift in the post-independence era,
Okay.
the nationalization of banks.
Nationalization.
Yeah.
That's a huge turning point
Mm-hmm.
in Indian banking history.
Yeah.
It's also a concept that's bound to be relevant
Oh, absolutely.
to us as law students.
Yeah.
But before we delve into that,
Yeah.
I think we need a quick recap of what we've learned so far.
Sounds good. Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and then dive into the fascinating story of nationalization in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Welcome back to LexTalks. So before we took a pause, we were, tracing the evolution of banking in India all the way from those ancient Adesha to the challenges faced during British rule.
Yeah.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Uncovering the layers of history that led to the system we have today.
It's a fascinating puzzle indeed.
Yeah.
And the next piece we need to fit in is a big one.
Okay.
The nationalization of banks in post-independence India.
Right.
This is where we see, a dramatic shift in the role of the government
Mm-hmm.
and the legal landscape surrounding the banking sector.
Okay, nationalization, it sounds like a pretty drastic move. I'm curious, what were the factors that led the Indian government to take such a bold step?
Well, imagine India in the early years after independence.
Okay.
The country was grappling with with poverty,
Yeah.
inequality,
Mhm.
and a lack of access to essential services,
Right.
including financial ones.
Okay.
Most banks were privately owned
Yeah.
and concentrated in urban areas,
hmm
leaving the vast rural population underserved.
So access to banking services
Yeah,
is a major issue,
it was a huge issue.
especially for those in rural areas.
Exactly. People in rural communities had limited options
hmm
for savings, for credit, or
Right.
even basic financial transactions.
Right.
They often relied on informal money lenders who charged exorbitant interest rates,
Yeah.
perpetuating a cycle of debt and poverty.
Right. Right.
So the government recognized the need to address this issue urgently.
I see. So nationalization was seen as a way to ensure that banking services reached everyone,
Yeah.
not just the privileged few.
hmm
It was a move towards social and economic inclusion.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Nationalization was driven by a vision of social justice
Hmm.
and economic empowerment.
Okay.
The idea was that by bringing banks under state control,
Yeah.
the government could direct them to serve the needs of the nation,
hmm
particularly those who had been excluded from
Yeah.
the formal financial system.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
But nationalization must have been a huge undertaking,
it was.
both logistically and legally.
Oh yeah.
How did the government go about implementing such a massive change?
It was indeed a complex process.
Yeah.
The first step was nationalizing the Reserve Bank of India in 1949.
Okay.
This move gave the government control over the central bank, which is, responsible for monetary policy,
hmm
regulating the banking sector,
Mhm.
and ensuring financial stability.
Okay.
It was a crucial step in laying the groundwork for broader nationalization.
So by nationalizing the RBI,
Yeah.
the government gained a powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
to shape the entire financial system.
Right.
But what about the other banks?
That came a few years later.
Okay.
In 1955, the Imperial Bank of India, which we discussed earlier,
Right.
was nationalized and became the State Bank of India.
State Bank of India.
Mm.
I guess that
Yeah.
explains why it's still considered the granddaddy of all Indian banks.
Yeah,
It has that historical legacy behind it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The nationalization of the Imperial Bank sent a strong signal
Mm-hmm.
that the government was serious about restructuring the banking sector and expanding its reach.
But
It didn't stop there.
there was more.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why this era is considered such a turning point. Yeah. In Indian banking history.
Between 1969 and 1980,
Okay.
the government nationalized a total of 20 major private banks.
Wow. That's a pretty big chunk of the industry.
It was.
I can only imagine the legal implications of such a move.
You're right.
Yeah.
The legal landscape underwent a massive transformation
Mm-hmm.
during this period.
Okay.
The government had to enact new laws
Right.
and amend existing ones to facilitate nationalization
Mm-hmm.
and create a framework for regulating these newly nationalized banks.
What were some of the key legal changes that came about during this period?
One of the most significant developments was
Yeah.
the enactment of the Banking Regulation Act of 1949.
Okay.
This act, originally designed to regulate all banking companies,
Hmm.
was amended to incorporate specific provisions
Right.
related to the functioning of nationalized banks.
The Banking Regulation Act of 1949.
Mhm.
That's a name every law student in India knows.
Right.
It's basically the Bible of banking law, right?
You could say that.
Yeah.
It empowers the Reserve Bank of India to regulate and supervise banks,
Mm-hmm.
ensuring their compliance with prudential norms
Right.
and safeguarding the interests of depositors.
Yeah.
The act also lays down rules for licensing,
Mm-hmm.
branch expansion, mergers,
Uh-huh.
and various other aspects of banking operations.
So the act provided the legal foundation
Yeah,
for the government's ambitious plan to restructure the banking sector.
precisely. It gave the RBI the authority to oversee these newly nationalized banks
Mm-hmm.
and guide their operations in line with national priorities.
Right, but it's crucial to remember that nationalization wasn't just about legal frameworks and,
Right.
and administrative control, right?
Yeah.
It was about achieving concrete outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what were some of the goals the government hoped to achieve through nationalization?
One of the primary aims, as we discussed earlier, was to increase financial inclusion.
Right.
The government wanted to ensure that people in rural and underserved areas
Hmm.
had access to basic banking services like savings accounts,
Okay.
credit and remittance facilities.
So the government used its control over banks to direct them to open branches in areas that were previously neglected by the private sector.
Exactly.
It was a way to ensure that banking services reached even the remotest corners of the country.
Exactly. Nationalization led to a significant expansion of
Mhm.
the banking network, especially in rural areas.
Okay.
This had a profound impact on financial inclusion, enabling millions of people to participate in the formal economy.
That's a major achievement.
It was
It sounds like nationalization really helped to bridge the gap between urban and rural India in terms of access to financial services.
Mhm.
Were there other positive impacts?
Um, Besides financial inclusion,
Yeah.
nationalization brought more funds into the banking system
Okay. Yeah.
as the government invested in these banks to ensure their stability and growth.
Right.
It also facilitated directed lending,
Hmm.
allowing the government to channel credit towards priority sectors
Yeah.
like agriculture,
Right.
small scale industries, and infrastructure development.
So nationalization wasn't just about bringing banking to the masses.
Right.
It was also about using the banking system as a tool for economic development.
That's a key insight.
Yeah.
The government saw banks as more than just institutions
Mm.
for savings and loans.
Right.
They were seen as engines for economic growth and social progress
Yeah.
by by directing credit towards specific sectors. Yeah.
The government aimed to stimulate economic activity
Mm-hmm.
and promote balanced development.
Sounds like nationalization was a pretty successful policy,
Yeah.
at least in terms of achieving its stated goals.
Well, the success of nationalization is a matter of ongoing debate.
Okay.
While it did achieve, significant progress
Mm-hmm.
in financial inclusion and directed lending,
Yeah.
it wasn't without its critics.
Oh, I'm sure there are different perspectives on such a major policy shift.
Yeah.
What were some of the criticisms leveled against nationalization?
Critics argued that government control led to bureaucracy,
Okay.
inefficiency,
Mm-hmm.
and a lack of innovation in the banking sector.
Right, right.
They felt that nationalized banks were not as responsive
Yeah.
to market forces or customer needs
Mhm.
compared to private banks.
So there was a concern that nationalization,
Yeah.
well-intentioned.
Might have stifled competition and dynamism
Yeah.
within the banking industry.
Exactly. Critics felt that a lack of competition could
Mhm.
lead to complacency and a decline in service quality.
Right.
They also argued that nationalized banks might be more susceptible
Mm.
to political interference, potentially compromising their financial health and
Right.
decision making.
It's interesting to see how a policy aimed at promoting social and economic
Yeah.
equality
Yeah.
could also raise concerns about efficiency
Mm.
and market dynamics.
Yeah.
It's a classic dilemma
Yes.
in economic policy, isn't it?
It certainly is, and this debate about the merits and drawbacks
Yeah.
of nationalization continues even today.
Mm.
It informs the ongoing discussions about
Yeah.
the role of public sector banks in the Indian economy and
Yeah.
the balance between social objectives and market forces.
So nationalization had its share of successes and challenges.
Mm.
It's a complex story
Is.
with long-lasting implications for
Yeah.
the legal and economic landscape of India.
Absolutely. And understanding this historical context
Yeah.
is crucial for you
Mm.
as future legal professionals.
Right.
You'll be dealing with the laws and regulations that were shaped by this era of nationalization,
Mhm.
as well as grappling with its ongoing legacy.
I can already see how this deep dive into history
Yeah.
is providing valuable context
Hmm.
for understanding the banking laws we're studying
Yeah.
in our textbooks.
Mm.
It's making those abstract concepts come alive.
That's the power of history. It
Yeah.
it provides the background, the
Mhm.
why behind the laws and institutions we
Yeah.
see today.
Right.
But But our historical journey isn't over yet.
Hmm.
The next chapter takes us to the era of liberalization and reforms,
Okay.
a period that ushered in a new wave of changes in the Indian banking
The
sector.
liberalization, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
It feels like we're moving from an era of government control to one of market forces.
Mm-hmm.
I'm eager to learn how this shift played out
Yeah.
and what it means for the future of banking in India.
And that's precisely what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Stay
Yeah.
tuned because things are about to get really interesting.
All right, looking forward to it. Welcome back to LexTalks. It feels like we've covered so much ground already in our deep dive into India's banking history.
We have.
From those ancient Adesha, which still kind of blows my mind,
Yeah.
all the way to the nationalization of banks after independence,
It's a fascinating journey.
right? Um, and I have to say, I'm really starting to understand how those events of the past, have shaped the system we have today.
It's all connected.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're entering a new era,
Mm.
right? The era of liberalization and reform.
All right, exactly.
And it feels like a huge shift from
Yep.
that government-controlled model we've been talking about.
Yeah, liberalization marked a really significant turning point
Yeah.
for the Indian economy as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and its impact on the banking sector was profound.
Yeah.
It's a period that's still unfolding, really, but
Yeah.
we can already see how it's reshaped, the legal and competitive landscape of banking in India.
So what sparked this wave of liberalization?
Yeah.
Was it a sudden change, or did it emerge gradually?
Well, the seeds of liberalization were sown in the late 1980s,
Okay.
as India faced, economic challenges like slow growth,
Yeah.
a balance of payments crisis,
Mhm.
and a mounting fiscal deficit.
Yeah.
The government realized that the existing economic model,
Well,
with its emphasis on state control and protectionist policies, was no longer sustainable.
So it sounds like India was at a crossroads, like needing to find a new path to economic growth and stability.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
that path led to liberalization,
Mm-hmm.
opening up the economy to greater private participation,
Mhm.
foreign investment, and market forces.
Well,
In 1991,
yeah.
under the leadership of then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh,
Mm-hmm.
India embarked on a series of reforms that
Right.
would fundamentally alter the course of its economic development.
That's interesting. We often hear about the 1991 reforms
Yeah.
as this landmark moment in Indian economic
Mhm.
history.
Yeah.
But but it's fascinating to see how they fit into the broader context
Right.
of what we've been discussing, the
Yeah.
need to address the limitations
Yeah.
of the nationalized banking system.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Liberalization wasn't about undoing nationalization completely,
Mm-hmm.
but about reforming it,
Yeah.
making it more efficient, competitive,
Right.
and responsive to the needs of a changing economy.
So how did liberalization specifically impact the banking sector?
Hmm.
Did it mean opening the doors to private banks again after decades of state dominance?
That's precisely what happened.
Okay.
One of the key drivers of this change was the Narasimham Committee, which was set up in 1991 to review the financial system
Right.
and recommend reforms.
The Narasimham Committee,
Yeah.
another name that pops up
Yeah,
constantly in banking law textbooks.
frequently.
Yeah. What were some of their major recommendations?
The committee's recommendations were pretty sweeping. They
Yeah.
advocated for reducing the government's stake in public sector banks,
Mhm.
allowing private and foreign banks to enter the market, and,
Yeah.
and strengthening regulatory mechanisms to ensure stability and transparency.
It sounds like a major shakeup
It was a big change.
of the banking landscape.
Yeah.
So how did these recommendations translate into actual changes? Did private banks really start making a comeback after all those years?
They did.
Oh yeah.
The RBI began granting licenses to new private banks in the early 1990s,
Mhm.
and several new players, entered the market.
Yeah.
Names like ICICI Bank,
Yes.
HDFC Bank, and Axis Bank
Right.
quickly gained, prominence, challenging the long-standing dominance of public sector banks.
ICICI, HDFC,
Mhm.
Axis.
Yeah,
Those are some of the biggest names in Indian banking today.
they are.
So they're all products of this liberalization era.
That's right.
Wow.
They entered the scene as private players and brought with them, a new focus on customer service,
Yeah.
innovative products,
Yeah.
and aggressive marketing strategies.
It sounds like this was a wake-up call
It was.
for the public sector banks.
Mhm.
Did they just sit back and watch
No,
as these new private banks took over the market?
not exactly. The
Oh.
the public sector banks faced a real challenge.
Yeah.
They had to adapt and reform
Mm.
to survive in this new competitive environment.
Yeah.
They started adopting new technologies,
Wow.
streamlining their operations,
Mm.
and focusing on improving customer service to retain their market share.
So liberalization essentially injected a dose of competition
Yeah.
into the banking sector,
Mm.
forcing everyone to step up their game.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The entry of private and foreign banks
Hmm.
brought, dynamism and innovation to the industry,
Okay.
benefiting consumers with greater choice and better services.
So it sounds like liberalization was a win-win for everyone.
To a large extent.
But did it have any downsides?
Well, every major policy shift has its complexities.
Right.
One concern was that the focus on market forces might lead to a neglect of financial inclusion,
Hmm.
as private banks might prioritize profitability over reaching underserved populations.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Did the government take any steps to mitigate this potential risk?
Yes, the government continued to emphasize financial inclusion as a key objective.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced initiatives like the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana,
Oh.
the PMJDY,
Yeah.
to bring banking services to every household in India,
Right.
regardless of their income or location.
The PMJDY.
Yeah.
We hear about it all the time. It seems like a massive
It is.
effort to ensure that no one is left behind
Right.
in the financial system.
Exactly. It's a prime example of how the government
Mhm.
continued to play a role
Mm-hmm.
in promoting financial inclusion, even as the private sector expanded its presence.
I'm noticing a pattern here.
Okay.
It seems like each era of banking in India
Mm-hmm.
builds upon the previous one,
Right.
addressing the challenges
Yeah.
and carrying forward the successes.
That's a keen observation.
Yeah.
That the history of banking in India isn't a series of isolated events.
Hmm.
It's an ongoing story of evolution and
Yeah.
adaptation.
So liberalization brought competition,
Yeah.
innovation,
Mm-hmm.
and a renewed focus on financial inclusion. But it also coincided with another major transformation,
Right.
the rise of technology.
Absolutely. The liberalization era. Mm-hmm.
Witnessed the rapid growth of information technology,
Right.
which had a profound impact on the banking sector.
Yeah.
We saw the introduction of ATMs,
Mm-hmm.
online banking, and
Right.
later mobile banking, revolutionizing the way people interact with their banks.
It's incredible how technology has transformed the banking experience.
Yeah.
I can't imagine life without online banking
Yeah.
or mobile payments.
It's become essential.
Right.
Mm-mm.
But this digital revolution
Yeah.
must have brought its own set of legal challenges.
You're right.
Yeah.
The rise of digital banking created a whole new realm of legal issues from data privacy and cybersecurity
Mm.
to the regulation of fintech companies.
Fintech, that's another buzzword we hear everywhere these days.
Yeah.
How does it fit into this evolving landscape of Indian banking? Fintech, short for financial technology,
Correct.
refers to the use of technology to deliver financial services in innovative ways.
Okay.
We're seeing a surge of fintech startups in India,
Mm.
offering everything from mobile wallets and peer-to-peer lending platforms to robo-advisory services
Yeah.
and blockchain-based solutions.
So fintech is basically disrupting
Yeah.
the traditional banking model,
Right.
bringing new players and new ways of doing things
Mm-hmm.
into the mix.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the legal complexities
Yeah.
that arise from this kind of disruption.
You're not wrong.
Uh-huh.
Regulators are constantly trying to keep pace
Right.
with these technological advancements,
Hmm.
striking a balance between fostering innovation and ensuring consumer protection.
It sounds like a challenging
Yes.
task. Yeah, as future legal professionals, we'll need to understand these emerging technologies
Yeah.
and the legal frameworks that govern them.
Absolutely. The world of banking is constantly evolving,
Uh-huh.
and the legal landscape is changing right along with it.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes
It's good.
to the dynamic nature of the banking sector
Mm-hmm.
and its connection to the legal profession.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground, from ancient Adesha to the rise of fintech.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's like a crash course in the history of Indian banking,
Mm-hmm.
but with a legal lens.
And that's what LexTalks is all about.
Yeah.
Making complex legal topics accessible
Mm-hmm.
and engaging for law students
Yeah.
and enthusiasts.
Right.
Hopefully this journey through time has given you a deeper understanding of how we arrived at the banking system we have today, and
Yeah.
the challenges it faces, and the opportunities that lie ahead.
It certainly has. I feel like I have a much better grasp
Mm-hmm.
of the historical forces, the policy decisions and the legal frameworks that have shaped the Indian banking sector.
Right.
You know, this knowledge will definitely come in handy as we delve deeper into our legal studies.
I'm glad to hear that. Right, the study of law isn't just about memorizing statutes and precedents. It's about understanding the context, the stories, and the human impact behind those laws.
Right.
And the history of banking in India
Hmm.
is a perfect example of how the law has evolved to meet the changing needs of society.
Well said. This deep dive has been a fantastic learning experience.
Good. I'm glad we could take this journey together.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on Lex Talks.
Thanks for having me.
And don't forget to subscribe for more insightful discussions on the fascinating world of Indian law.
We'll see you next time.
Until next time.